Yo, shut the ball. Shut the ball. Systemshark. This shit pick up, copyrighted for WCReplays.com. Don't go stealing, don't go reeling, or we will come kick your ass. This is on the ball, we be partying in the night all long. Recognizing, pimping as we riding.
Hey all, it's Systemshark again, bringing to you another audio commentary for WCReplays.com. I want you guys to get the replay file synced up at the 1 minute and 45 second mark. This is one of my favorite matchups, is actually, or teams to actually have for 2v2s is Orc and Undead. It's the team that I play. I normally play as Orc and I get my girlfriend to play Undead. And the basic premise of Orc and Undead is so that you have the strongest early meat unit, the Grunts, and the strongest early piercing unit, which is Fiends. And those are basically the two most powerful of their type in the game. So the Orc would focus on getting more Grunts early on, and the Undead's focusing on Fiend, which is what we're definitely going to see in this game. For Orc and Human, generally you see the same thing. Orc is generally going to be staying with Grunts early on, and Human was usually going to start off with a few Footmen. But since Grunts are be serving more as the front line, the Human needs to make a switch to rifles near Tier 2 or at Tier 2, just to have that more focus fire DPS output. The Orcs in this game, for the Undead opponent, or the Undead and Orc team, are going to be going for a Blade Master first with a Shadow Hunter second, and for the Orc and Human team, the Orc player is going to opt for a Farseer first with Torn Chieftain second. Now both those heroes kind of complement each other in 1v1 games, and even more so in 2v2s. The Orc and Undead team have a lot of hero focus fire and unit focus fire advantages using the Blade Master and using Hex from the Shadow Hunter and using Coil and Nova from the Undead heroes, whereas you got more of a support and creeping intensive and summon strategy with the Orcs and Humans using Water Elementals and Wolves from the Farseer. Also, using the Torn Chieftain second gives you that added tank that you might not have as that you're kind of giving up if you go Shadow Hunter. But Shadow Hunter, I think, a little bit more effective, as you has a little bit more versatility with Hex. As soon as he pops out, he's a little bit more useful. As the Torn Chieftain takes a little bit more longer to become effective. So I've talked for a good amount of time. You guys should be synced up at the 1 minute 45 second mark at 1x speed, and we're going to go ahead and get this unpaused for you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, unpause. All right, so we're on pause now. Generally, you want to be scouting out, even if on a small map like Twisted Meadows, where you know that there's only, you know exactly where your opponents are going to be at, you still want to scout out and find where they are relatively early on. The idea for this Human and Orc team is going to be to harass the Undead team. So generally, they only really have to scout one location to find out where the Undead is. If they scout one location and find, hey, there's the Orc player, they know the other location, this general starting location for the is going to be the Undead player. So they're going to bring some units. They're going to bring their heroes, which have summons. This is going to be a little bit of a harassment, and generally the Undead is the target of a harassment. If you're going to play Orc and Undead as a team, be ready to defend your Undead teammate, because the Undead is going to be weaker than the Orc early on. And it's going to be harder for the Undead to... It's going to be more effective for them to harass the Undead opponent to delay his tech and any Fiend production, since the Fiends are really the DPS of the Orc and Undead team. So right now you see the Orc and Human team, Team Sui, bringing their units in to try to harass some Acolytes. And also you see they already forced the cancellation of one Ziggurat, and they're actually going to be able to force this cancellation of the second Ziggurat that's being produced right now, which is definitely the goal here. You want to slow down the unit production of this Undead. You want to limit the amount of Fiends that he's going to produce. And also, if you can catch him while he's teching, you're going to want to take out as many Acolytes as possible. If you can take out 1 or 2 Acolytes, it's going to be a big decision for this Undead player to continue teching or to cancel his tech and remake those Acolytes. He's going to lose a lot of resources if he doesn't. So taking out Acolytes is a good way to slow down this Undead's tech and also slow down his unit production. So definitely a good target. The idea here, obviously, like I said, to target the building Ziggurats and any buildings under construction, and also the Acolytes. But you don't want to take that many losses yourself. Even losing summons at this level can, you don't want to be feeding your opponents any experience. So you notice that the Human player especially is trying to not allow any of his Footmen to get killed. He tried to deny that Footman kill with his Archmage, but the Death Knight was actually able to get in there and kill that. So it's a little bit of shoutcasting, but I'm trying to set the scene for you guys so you guys can pay attention to certain micro decisions that these players make. So now this harass was actually pretty much done here. They did their damage. They were able to slow down the production of this Undead, and now they're just going to back off and try to wait for something else to happen here. The decision that most players have to make in a 2v2 match is their early game early game actions they want to take. Do they want to play a more harassing role, which is what this orc and human player have decided to do, or do they want to play a more defensive creep and counter? You'll often ask if you play, or see when you play random team games, that your teammate might ask you, hey, do you want to harass or CNC? CNC stands for creep and counter. Basically, that means that you're just going to play defensively and waiting for your opponents to do their damage, and then hopefully you'll have enough of a creep advantage with your heroes and hero level advantages that you're able to counter them after their harassment. So that's definitely what these players are opting to do right now. So both players, again, creeping here. You notice that the human player opted to put a scout farm on the southern location in between the orcs and humans, orc and undead base. And that scout farm really well placed here because it's going to do two things. If the orc player decides to clear out that gold mine, which is actually the safest gold mine for him to clear out right now, other than the island one, which is a little bit dangerous because it's a heavy creep advantage, but definitely for location purposes, islands are better. Anyway, the gold mine that's in between the orc and undead base is the best gold mine for them to expand at, basically because they can easily defend it, and it's harder. It kind of puts the orc and their opponent in a bad positioning to get in there. So just a lot of creeping going on. Again, both teams wanting to try to keep their level advantages on their heroes and on their units, and try to delay that advantages for the other team. Now you notice actually at the orc base, the yellow orc who's on the top for the orc and human team, that he was building a bestiary, and it was canceled by this undead and orc harassment who came in to try to cancel it. Definitely the target of it's a good idea to try to pick the orc player off at this point in the game and towards the tier 2, because then you can cancel his bestiaries, which are going to delay raider production if he opts for raiders. But this orc has done something a little bit strange and has tech straight to fortress, and he actually did this before his bestiary was canceled, so he's already has a second plan in mind. However, canceling that bestiary and losing his shop right there is going to make defending this push really hard. This fight that's going to last here in this orc space is actually going to last a pretty long time, and having canceled the tier 2 buildings and having no other buildings in production, now you want to force your opponent to either lose their hero or to force some TP. So using the Blade Master and Shadow Hunter out now, the undead and orc team are able to focus off individual units and try to hurt the orc and human team here. So you notice they're finding low HP heroes, then they'll pop the Hex off, and then they use their Death Knight and Blade Master to focus on those heroes here. So lots of hero deaths here. You notice Yellow's lost both his heroes already. The Yellow Orc player has lost the Farce here, and just now his Torn Chieftain, so it's really looking bad for him. He doesn't want to lose any of his units, so he's bringing them back behind the burrows. And now the Undead and Orc team has decided to start hurting this Orc player even more by taking out his burrows. He's doing a really good job of bringing his grunts in and trying to force them back. He hasn't lost any burrows yet, so he's doing pretty good with that. But he's severely behind in his tech production. He doesn't have his tier 2 buildings. This Archmage, really low HP, is actually going to go down here to a burrow focus fire. Actually was denied by the Orc player. Very slick little move there. The Death Knight actually did not get the kill on that, so that's pretty slick. And then the Death Knight used the Staff of Teleportation to get out. Again, just shoutcasting, but in case you guys didn't notice that for the micro-intensive little battles here. So now the Orc and human team are playing a little bit more defensively. Since the Mountain King came out, the harassment at that Orc space had to pretty much stop, because until the Orc has his Raiders out, which he does now, he's at a disadvantage with control, especially after wasting all his early mana with Hex. So they decided to back off and again creep. They did their damage. They kind of just turned the tides there for the Orc and human team, because now the Orc is going to be delayed in producing his tech buildings. He still doesn't have his War Mill up. He's just now building it, and he's at tier 3, so this is severely going to hurt this Orc player's tech, and he's just now building his Spirit Lodge. So he's kind of having to take a step back here and start back at his tier 2 buildings before he can really take advantage of his tech advantage, which is what he has now at being at tier 3. So both players again doing a good bit of creeping. The Undead player, actually both players now all at tier 2. You notice when actually forgot to mention it, but at when they were harassing the Undead player early on in the game, all the other players were teching to tier 2 while the Undead was stuck at tier 1. So again, just really iterating that Undead was a good target for this harassment here, really slowing down his Fiend production and his tech advantage. Got another fight, a little fight going on right here between the human and the Undead, and the Orc's going to come in to help him with his Torn Chieftain and Farce here. And now some Raiders are in the picture, so this is looking pretty bad now for the Orc and Human team not having any control here. They don't have Stomp from the Tauren Chieftain. The yellow Orc players opted for Shockwave to complement Chain Lightning, which in this instance is probably a little bit of a mistake because he does